Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are joined by a special guest, friend of the show, Theo Ash, member of the Stay Heart podcast, now with the Pro Football Network. We've had him on many times, dating all the way back when we were just a couple kids in college at Arizona State University. How about that, Theo? How far we've come. Great to have you here. How are we doing today? How was your Labor Day?
Doing pretty well, doing pretty well. I was down in the Great Sand Dunes National Park earlier today. Woke up bright and early.
Tossed.
Good little 5 a.m. Alarm set.
Oh.
Got up at the crack of dawn, watched the sunrise over the dunes, and then sat in traffic for 5 hours on the way home. So, it's been a pretty typical Memorial Day or Labor
Nope,
Day, I
nope, nope,
guess.
nope, nope. Labor Day.
Labor Day, my bad.
Yes, this one is for the laborers, my friend.
Let's
Logan,
go.
you're speaking now full time. We had you muted at the start of last episode, but we've decided to give you your full mic privileges back.
Yeah, also just on the record, you're a dick for that tweet, dude. I was going to just tweet it back, but I'll just say it here. You're such a dick for that tweet. Yeah, I've been rigorously brushing my teeth for 3 days now. So these are the first words I've said since our last pod.
Yeah, Logan hopped on the recording just vigorously brushing away at his chompers. So everybody's locked in clearly after the long weekend. We are locked in to talk about the last division in our NFL season preview. We are down to the NFC West, a very good, very interesting division, which is why we have Theo on with us today. Before we get into this, the big news to break out of this division over the last few days is that the Brandon Aiyuk saga is over. Unfortunately, Logan, the Steelers will not be getting him. No other team will be getting him in a trade. He has signed with the Niners for 4 years, 120. Theo, what do you make of this deal, what this means for the Niners, how this whole thing played out?
I think that it's a great deal for the Niners to get this done. I think that Brandon Aiyuk is a super special player. I think that his elasticity running routes and the way he's able to set people up on the stem before like just leaving them in the dust is crucially important. I mean, everybody knows what route he's going to run. He's going to run a dig over the middle. And like ideally, you just want to sit on that, but he'll sell you so far like he's breaking out that you kind of got to bite on it and then he'll just cross your face and turn up field, and he's kind of a bigger receiver. He'll hurdle you, he'll run through you, he can juke you out. So he's amazing. And I remember his catch against the Lions in that NFC Championship game. It bounced off Vildor's face mask. He continued to track it in the air, like dove for it. He's a complete wide receiver, and they absolutely needed to bring him back. I think that he was second in EPA generated against man coverage last year. Deebo Samuel was like 130th or something like that. So you need that dominant man coverage beater on the outside to win those in breakers and pick up yak if you're the 49ers. I don't think Ricky Pearsall would have like slot into that role as beautifully as Brandon Aiyuk did year one. So yeah, it was important they brought him back.
Yeah, shout out fellow ASU legend Ricky Pearsall. I hope he's good.
And Brandon Aiyuk, how about that? What a factory.
Yeah, I hope he's good. We got news over the weekend that he was, in a shooting. So I hope Ricky Pearsall's all good. Yeah, Ayuk's an invaluable weapon to have, and like you mentioned, Theo, I mean, just a guy that can win consistently one-on-one is, a big elevator in your offense, especially with all these other weapons. You just couldn't afford to lose him. The only ripple effect I'm nervous about with giving Aiyuk the money, and I want to be clear, like I'd pay him, basically whatever he wanted. Again, he's that kind of, wide receiver one weapon, but I'm worried just about Big Trent Williams and getting his deal done and like how that affects him. And if Trent Williams is going to be healthy, I think that has a big bearing on the Niners' outlook for this regular season and the playoffs as well. Like I think they need him. That offensive line isn't really anything special without him, and I think they need him to, one, to make a playoff push, and then two, to win a Super Bowl. So the only worry I have with Aiyuk getting paid is just also how they get Trent Williams paid.
Yeah, and that obviously is going to be the ongoing concern for the Niners. Trent, of course, is 36, which throws another wrench in any sort of big-time contract coming his way. But there's just a lot of elite football players who got to get paid here. You have the highest paid defensive end in football with Bosa. Now you have one of the handful of highest paid receivers in football with Aiyuk. You have one of the elite tackles. You have one of the elite tight ends. You go up and down the roster, one of the elite linebackers. And, of course, a big reason that they have the ability to pay these guys at this moment is because they still have Purdy on the rookie contract. And I think that's where in a couple years, they're going to be at a really interesting crossroads. Who knows how long like a true Super Bowl window can stay open for them regardless. But if there's anything enabling them to maintain all this elite talent, it's being able to get solid quarterback play, potentially good enough for them to win the Super Bowl because the rest of their roster is so great, with, of course, the most valuable contract in football, that being Purdy on the rookie deal. I do think that the Niners had to do this because I think that if they lost Aiyuk, that legitimate Super Bowl window would close for the meantime. Like, I like Pearsall, but like Theo said, I don't think you're replicating that value immediately, probably not ever, that you have from Aiyuk. Debo was not as complete a receiver, not a true number one in the way that Aiyuk is. So it's a lot, and it is just a continuation of a very interesting trend league-wide that we just saw with CeeDee, that we've seen really over the last couple off seasons, of receivers getting paid significantly more than any position other than quarterback. There are 6 receivers making $30 million a year. There's 1 edge rusher in Bosa. There's 1 defensive tackle in Chris Jones. There are no offensive tackles in all of football making that much, which I think is pretty antithetical to how historically positions have been valued. It's been establishing the perimeters of the trenches, both offensively and defensively, after quarterback as your top priority. And also just with how insanely rich receiver talent is in the league right now. You think about all the impactful rookie receivers who come in last year: Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs, Tank Dell, JSN. You can really go on and on. This year, 8 of the first 34 picks are receivers. So that's where I wonder league-wide if, although it's a very important position, we're acting as though it's overly scarce when it's really an incredibly rich, deep, talented position. And I do think you can draft guys and get a lot of immediate production. But that is more of a broad take, because I do think the Niners specifically are in a spot where if you can pay your elite player, you should do so, because the window is right now for them. They were just on the brink of winning the Super Bowl. They could be right back there again this year. So I think that they made the right decision. And you didn't pay him Jettis money. You didn't pay him CD money, which I think would have been an overpay. I think the per year value is reasonable here. Okay, with that being said, Theo, do you have the Niners winning the division? And what do you expect from them this year after that Super Bowl heartbreak?
I expect them to win the division, but still to regress a little bit. When you're as good as they were last season, generating explosives at the rate they were, I mean, Purdy's numbers were astronomically good. Mm-hmm. It's hard to, I think, repeat that performance, especially not even really anything going wrong with the offense. But, you know, there's always a little bit of brain drain, like Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, went over to New Orleans, and just general luck of it all, right? But with that being said, there's a lot of teams that are at the top every single year. The Patriots won the division how many times in a row? The Bills have won the division 5 times in a row. It's certainly possible. So even though I think last year might be the peak of offensive production for the 49ers, I certainly don't think it's any kind of guarantee that they fall off in any kind of substantial way. So I expect more of the same from them, at least on the offensive side of the ball. On defense, it's a little bit sketchier than I think it's been in years past. They lost Eric Armstead. They lost Chase Young, who they just traded a 3rd-round pick for. He was legitimately a good starter for them, even though he was a little bit underwhelming and kind of has a bad reputation as a 2nd overall pick bust, right? He was still a good player, I think better than Leonard Floyd. And this was a team that really struggled to stop the run last year, and he was very good at that. So I think getting north and south on this team, if you're able to run downhill, you can make it a game with the 49ers, just like the Lions and Packers did last year. It's just, do you have the afterburners after that to beat them, where they kind of came up a little bit short and the 49ers had them. So I expect it to look very similar to last year. It's kind of a roll of the dice if they make it all the way or not, because they were very, very close, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, as close as anybody has gotten against Kansas City, right? I mean, you take them to OT, Brock almost has the game on ice and just doesn't make the throw. Yeah, I expect more of the same for San Francisco. And like you said, a little bit of regression. They go 12-5 last season. I expect them to go 11-6. And, you know, you talk about teams and what they're going to do against the Niners defensively. A lot of it, I think, is still going to be kind of track meet-esque. Can you hang with this offense? I still expect them to be relatively explosive. You're bringing back a lot of the same cast of characters. The brilliant mind of Kyle Shanahan, McCaffrey, Aiyuk, Debo, Kittle. And a big part of this is that I really, really do trust Brock Purdy. I know, Carson, you and I were pretty critical of him last year when people were trying to elevate him into, these MVP level conversations. I don't think Brock's a top 10 guy, but he's top half of the league. He makes good decisions. He goes through his progressions well. He's accurate. He's on time. And he's got a little bit of that play extension and play creation with his legs. The defense, I do expect to take a step back. You lose Chase Young. You lose Eric Armstead. They replenish a little bit with Leonard Floyd and Devondre Campbell. You do have Hufanga coming back from an injury, which I think is big. Hopefully he's there the entire year. So I think the rest of this division got a little bit better. I think the schedule's kind of tough. That's why I'm expecting the one-game slip. But also, I am worried about this offensive line. Like, Trent Williams has not reported. I know I just brought this up, but if Big Trent Williams is not out there, like, that is a meaningful loss to this team where maybe I could see them losing 2 more games than last year, maybe 3. Like, that is a meaningful loss. In the middle, you've got Feliciano, you've got Brendel, you've got Banks, right? Those guys are serviceable, nothing special. Trent is what, anchors this line. It's what makes them special. It's what, having a guy like Trenton Kittle on the outside when you're running a toss to McCaffrey, it's hard to freaking stop. Those guys are elite blockers, and so that's just the one thing I have earmarked where if Trent misses time, if they can't get this contract thing ironed out by the start of the season, which is rapidly approaching, and I would pay Trent. I know he's 36. Again, like you said, Carson, the Super Bowl window, you don't know how long it's got to be open. You got to capitalize on it while it's here, and so I'd pay Trent whatever he asks. If he's out, I do think that opens up a sliver of a chance maybe for the Rams or somebody to maybe steal this division, but I'm still going to take San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that they're a clear favorite, and I think they're probably still like the default favorite in the NFC. It's just not as strong a conference, but I do expect some regression this year like you guys. Not significant regression. I still have them winning 12 games, but like Theo was saying, I don't see how the offense could get better. I mean, last year was a ridiculously productive season from them. They were 4th in rushing efficiency yards per attempt. They were 1st in passing efficiency yards per attempt. And they do add Ricky Pearsall, who's another talented guy, but he's been injured throughout preseason. Now, as Logan mentioned, luckily he's out of the hospital, but they say he's going to be out a month at least after this shooting, which is just a terrible thing. And if you look at the collective performance and health of the unit last year, like, it was pretty exceptional. I mean, Kittle was very healthy. Debo was very healthy. Those are guys who have been prone to missing a few games over the years. Same goes with CMC, who was exceptionally healthy. So everything came together really nicely, and I just don't see how Purdy improves. I actually think that he could improve a bit as a football player, but I don't see how his production improves because the explosiveness, the efficiency was so ridiculous last year. He doesn't really have the physical tools to like grow into and tap into some upside there. I think the one thing would be improving as a decision maker. And at times, Logan, you mentioned he does have that play extension, which can be a positive, but also there are times where he gets a little bit reckless and he puts the ball in harm's way. I think he could get cleaner about that. But last year, I think that he was more careless with the football than the raw turnover numbers would suggest. And it felt like the Ravens game was sort of a reckoning for that, where all of a sudden every 50-50 turnover started going against him instead of going for him. So I'm not a Purdy hater. I'm also not a Purdy enthusiast. Like you said, Logan, I think he's a pretty average starting quarterback who's in the best possible offensive situation. The same one that made Jimmy Garoppolo produce in terms of efficiency as one of the elite quarterbacks in league history. I think Purdy's better than Jimmy G, but I don't think he's an upper echelon starter. So the offense is going to be great, to be clear. It's just I don't know that it can improve from last year. And defensively, I think that they will take a little bit of a step back. I do think that they were already not great against the run. They were solid there, but you think about especially some of those playoff matchups, the Lions were able to run the football on them. The Packers were mostly able to run the football on them. And I think Eric Armstead and Chase Young to Leonard Floyd and Malik Collins, that's a meaningful downgrade. I do like Leonard Floyd, but more as a pure pass rusher. And I don't think the pass rush will be quite the same along with the run defense. Dre Greenlaw also probably out for the regular season, so that makes the linebacking core a little bit more of a question mark, even though they bring in Devondre Campbell. I do think the secondary is still awesome. Like, they're absurdly talented. Again, they're not going to me, fall off a cliff whatsoever, but I don't see them getting better really in any way. And that's where I think they're more vulnerable, because last year it felt like end to end, they were the clear NFC favorite. They were a buzzsaw. And this year, again, they might still be the NFC favorite, but it's not by nearly the same margin.
Yeah. And I liked what you said about them staying healthy, Carson. This is a team that was kind of built on injury-prone players, and we always talked about it on Stay Hot, is like, yeah, if they can stay healthy. Last year, they were the third healthiest offense and the sixth healthiest defense. So that's pretty good. That is pretty good.
Yeah.
They have not hit those numbers in any of the years before that, especially on defense. They were the 26th, 29th, 32nd, and 26th healthiest defense the 4 years before last season, which who knows what the number could be. I think it's kind of randomly generated, you know. But yeah, for them to be so healthy on both sides of the ball, definitely up in the air. They were statistical outliers in terms of their overall team offensive success rate, EPA per dropback, like legitimately outlier territory, which is good. But if you're an outlier, it's just hard to repeat. You know, maybe they're 1.9 z-score standard deviation, but like it's not going to be quite as high, you know.
So I don't want to jump the shark if you want to save any of this for like Wednesday, but are they your guys' favorite out of the NFC? I think I'd have San Francisco probably 2. I've already said I'm taking Detroit out of the NFC. I don't have San Francisco going back to the title game this year. I have another team, but are they the favorite to you guys in the NFC still?
I think on paper, they are still the strongest, most complete team. Personally, when you're asking about my picks, I don't think I'm going to pick them to go to the Super Bowl, because I feel more confident in the Chiefs out of the AFC, because I think the Chiefs got meaningfully better. Remarkably, I think that offense now is a good bit more skilled, and clearly the formula of defense plus Mahomes at the level he's at was already enough to win them a Super Bowl in what was their weakest roster. I think this is probably the most complete Chiefs team. So I'm not literally going to pick the Super Bowl to be run back. That doesn't happen, and that's boring. So for only that reason, I won't pick the Niners. That reason, and the fact that I do think they're a little bit weaker than last year, I do still worry about Brock going toe-to-toe with the elite quarterbacks. Like, I think it matters that you have a quarterback who is capable to rise to that level. As good as your roster may be, I think there are those moments, those drives, those big-time throws that you need. And listen, Brock got them to the brink last year. So I don't think that he is a guy who you can't win the Super Bowl with. But there were shaky moments there. There were shaky moments against the Lions and shaky moments against the Packers. And he mostly pulled through, but I do still view that as a slight disadvantage against some of these other NFC teams, none of whom necessarily have A-plus quarterbacks, but who have guys who I trust a little bit more.
Yeah, it scares me to pick against the 49ers and to see everybody else pick against the 49ers of the NFC. Like Detroit, it's going to be Philly, it's going to be Green Bay, but I'm a Green Bay guy. I think that Jordan Love is him, and I think they're going to continue the success that they had at the end of last season when Love was putting up MVP numbers. I think that was the real them. So I think I'm going with Green Bay, but I'd put the 49ers probably second.
That's interesting, the Green Bay pick. I think that the Lions are a very compelling contender, but I do worry about the defense. I do worry about the secondary. Like, I think that we know that offense is going to be elite, but that's a real question mark. Philly, I do think, is intriguing. It kind of hinges upon how much do they improve defensively from last year's disaster class, and what version of Jalen Hurts do we get? Because I thought, obviously, he regressed a great deal last year, and I think he really needs to have a bounce-back season if they're going to be like a Super Bowl contender, but they do have the talent on that football team. So there's definitely competition in a way that, again, I felt like last year it was clearer that the Niners were the top dog.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, but I've been on too many podcasts predicting not the 49ers to make it, and I'm like, and I'm one of them too. I'm one of them too. It's like, I think it's going to be Green Bay, but I'm scared because no one wants to pick the 49ers.
For sure. And Logan, the fact that you don't have them in the championship game, I mean, that's basically been inevitable when they've been healthy.
Oh, yeah.
It's
with
three
whoever,
straight
with whoever
2020,
is the
they're
QB, yeah.
literally not healthy at all, so that doesn't count. Year before that, they're in the Super Bowl. Like, it is exceptional, the consistent elite team success that they've put forth.
And I was just going to say, the one thing that Brock Purdy does have going for him is that he does play in the NFC, where the quarterback competition is not – everybody's not head and shoulders above him. If he was in the AFC,
Right.
I mean, he's not a top QB in the playoff field whatsoever. He'd be at the bottom with whoever's in that field. In the NFC, I think I'd take Stafford, I'd take Jordan Love, I'd take Dak.
Yeah.
But that list, I might take Hurts, but that list is not nearly as long
Yeah.
as the laundry list it is in the
For
AFC. And that's why I think they definitely have a better chance in the NFC. But no, I'm gonna take the second team in this division to make the title game, man. I like them a lot.
Whoa. All right, well, Logan, please enlighten us, because I don't think it's clear who the second team in this division is. Who do you have, then, making this deep playoff run out of the West?
I'm taking the Rams, and I have them
Oh,
finishing
my.
with the same record as the 49ers, both of these teams at 11-6. I have San Francisco winning the head-to-head battle. I have them sweeping LA, so they're going to win the tiebreaker and get the higher seed. I mean, I was really impressed with LA last season. It was supposed to be a rebuilding effort. You have breakout campaigns from Kyron Williams, from Puka Nacua, who broke the rookie receiving record. And I'm expecting this to, once again, be one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. They were tied fifth in offensive yards per play. They had the number 7 passing offense, the number 8 scoring offense, and the number 12 rushing offense. And they went 7-1 in the final 8 games. Like, Theo, you talk about the Packers getting hot down the stretch. I think the Rams are, more of that team we saw in the second half than we saw in the first half. And I think the most important thing is that they continue running the ball the way they did last year. They had 100 or more rushing yards in 7 of their final 8 games. I think it is impossible to defend a team like that. They can run the ball at that high of a clip, and then you have still a top 10 quarterback in Stafford with an elite receiving group. I still think Stafford's a top 10 QB. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the second half of the season. People were talking about, is he still, top 5? Is he still top 3? Regardless of where you have him, he's still one of the best arm talents in the league. He can make every throw in the book. And he's got a little bit of that play extension and creation. I like the O-line. They signed Jonah Jackson. They re-signed Kevin Dotson. Dotson was a bum with the Steelers. I'm not going to put that on Dotson. I think that was more the Steelers don't know what they're doing with their offensive scheme. That's a Matt Canada problem. Steve Avila was good at guard last season. They're going to move him to center. And I like the tackle duo, Rob Havenstein and Jackson. Jackson's going to be out the first 2 weeks with a suspension. The big question is the defense. I think you can bank on the offense. No more Aaron Donald and no more Raheem Morris. But I like this front a lot. Kobe Turner and Byron Young had phenomenal rookie years. Kobe notched 9 sacks. Young had 8. They add to it with the Florida State front line, Jared Verse and Braden Fiske. I'm worried about the back half of the defense, but I'm hoping that they improve. I'm worried because they traded Ernest Jones to the Titans. I liked him last year. The back 7 of the defense is where I'm most worried about the Rams, and I'm hoping that they improve there with all the young talent they have, and they can turn these games into shootouts. Over the middle, you're looking at undrafted free agent Omar Spates starting. I'm not in love with. You're also looking at Christian Roseboom starting. I don't know, man. McVay and Snead are really sold. And then last season, they were number 20 defending the pass. They lose Jordan Fuller, and they add some questionable guys. They had Cam Curl. They had Trey White. They had Darius Williams. Those should be improvements. Like, again, I think when people hear Trey White, like, it's definitely an improvement from where they were. But I worry about him being healthy and what he can give you, at this stage in his career. So I think they're going to need to win a lot of shootouts. I think they need Stafford, Kupp, Williams, and Puka to be healthy. But I think this is going to be a hard offense to keep up with. I think they're going to be able to put pressure on the quarterback. I think they're going to be able to stuff the run. All of my questions with LA come with the back 7. But this is a great team down the stretch last year, and I expect them to carry it into next year. And they were really close to knocking off Detroit in the wild card last round. Like, this was a super competitive team. And so I think with all the youth on this roster, there's a lot of room for these young guys to get better. And so I'm buying all of it, man. I buy into the Rams. I think they're a legit contender this year. And I thought about picking them to the Super Bowl. I believe that much in this offense.
See, in my record predictions, I had them winning 7 games and finishing last in the division.
Wow.
So let's hear it, Theo. Why are you so much on the opposite side of the spectrum with LA?
The defense losing Raheem Morris, losing Aaron Donald, now losing Ernest Jones. It's just going to be tough. It was an okay defense last year, 21st in defensive EPA per play, 23rd in havoc rate. That's PBUs, tackles for losses, sacks, interceptions, things like that. I mean, they did way better than I thought they were going to do, because when I looked at their roster last year, I thought it was Aaron Donald and a bunch of plumbers. My challenge to people was to name like 3 players on the Rams defense not named Aaron Donald, and like I couldn't even do it, right? I was like, who are these people? They definitely overperformed my expectations, but their defensive coordinator is gone. So it's like, what can we expect? And as far as their draft goes, I'm very interested to see how these new defensive linemen fit into the scheme, because I remember last year, this was a team that really loved to play the bear front, the 3-4, Michael Hoyt and Byron Young playing outside linebacker. And if teams wanted to spread them out, those guys were forced to kind of walk out into the slot, play a lot of coverage. If that's Jared Verse, that's a bad scheme fit. Like, I guess I don't know exactly what they're going to run because the season hasn't started yet. But Verse, to me, like, very stiff, very much just a downhill guy. I think you need him just rushing the passer, basically on 100% of snaps. And even then, like, man, he's powerful. Like, he's got the bull rush, but that's kind of all he has. That's kind of the only club he's got is reverse pancake, 2-hand bull rush, try to knock you on your ass. Like, I think that these offensive linemen in the NFL are just going to sit on that. I don't know how effective he's going to be. And then Fisk too, like, he's really small. I don't know if he's going to hold up against the run. I wasn't super high on their draft. Now, I hear what you're saying about the offense. Stafford, one of my favorite players, like, the creativity within the pocket, the fact that he'll just like flick it sidearm, like his wrist won't even move and it like curves around. So I mean, it's great. Yeah, it is erotic. It is erotic. It gets me hot. It gets me hot and bothered. Nakua is legit. I think that Kupp is gonna have his best season in a while. Like, going into it healthy. Kyron Williams was a dog last year. So, I like Blake Corum in this scheme. That's the thing that concerns me, like, just as much as the defense concerns you. And I make my hot take is like, man, this offense just might be very good. But I don't know. I think there is some injury concerns with this entire offense. Kyron Williams is constantly breaking his foot. Cooper Kupp has always dealt with injuries. Nakua in college a little bit. It's why he fell. Stafford as well, getting a little bit older. Offensive line already dealing with suspensions and some injuries. In this really tough division, I just don't know if things align for the Rams this year, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm closer to Theo, and it pains me to say this because I really like the Rams. I love Matt Stafford. He is one of my favorite players to watch. I think that he has been chronically underappreciated, and I thought that last year was some of the best football that he has ever played. I mean, he was sparkling down the stretch. He was just fantastic. But my concerns are not about the offense whatsoever. I think the offense is going to be really good. Maybe a little bit better than last year, even with a full season of healthy Kupp, understanding what they have in Kyron Williams, who is an excellent runner of the football. Like, it should be a very good borderline elite offense. I like the line. It's not an elite line, but it's a good group. They're checking a lot of boxes there. McVay is great. But I think it's tough. The defense could be one of the worst in football. Like Theo said, like, they were holding on to being okay last year. They're 19th in yards and points allowed per drive. Losing Aaron Donald alone is massive against the run and against the pass. Like, this is one of the greatest, most impactful defensive players we've seen in the history of this sport, and I do think that the front is now a real question mark. I also think Ernest Jones, I mean, if you were going to look at who was the next most important player to this defense last year, you could really make a strong argument that it was him, just being an extremely versatile defensive player, very crucial to the entire scheme. And like Theo says, we don't know how much the scheme will change this year. We don't know how much the Morris loss will affect things, but I don't like losing Raheem Morris either. I do not like the linebacker situation. I love Trey White. He's one of my favorite football players of the last decade. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any reason to expect that he will be a plus starter now at his age, having already regressed some, now having torn his Achilles and ACL. Like, it's just brutal, man. It's just brutal. So I don't know that he is a solution at corner. So that's what it comes down to. I think you're looking at a very good offense and a very bad defense. And I think that they basically cancel each other out in a really tough division. They make you a pretty average football team. So I have them winning 8 games. I was between 8 and 9. I don't see that NFC Championship ceiling. I don't see that Super Bowl ceiling just because I really think the defense is far away. And I think it's going to take a meaningful big step back from where they were last year, which was already mediocre.
Yeah, I hear both of you guys. My final piece, one, Aaron Donald is an irreplaceable guy on defense. I mean, I think for my money, I think he's the second greatest defender in like NFL history. I think one is Lawrence Taylor, and then I think it goes Aaron Donald. To have one, like how remarkably healthy and consistent Donald was, where every year you could pencil him in as the best defensive tackle in football, so impactful against the run, so good rushing the passer from the interior. Like, I mean, you're talking about like, you know, Mean Joe Green kind of dominance, like greatest defensive tackle of all time. And so I think,
Come on now. Mean Joe wasn't putting that sort of pressure on the
bro,
pocket
that's
from
just
the inside.
shut up.
Dude,
Not like
Mean Joe Green is
Aaron Donald's the
disrespectful, bro.
GOAT.
That's just disrespectful. I'm saying I think
Mean
Aaron
Joe
Donald.
Green is number 2. Aaron Donald's number 1.
I agree, but you're acting like Mean Joe couldn't.
I'm
The
not.
Steelers weren't shit until Mean Joe showed up.
I'm not
bro.
acting like anything. I'm saying Aaron Donald is the best interior pass rusher ever.
I
And that he
agree.
is the
Just don't
best
act like Mean
defensive
Joe
tackle
couldn't
ever.
hold his jock, man.
I'm
Mean Joe could
not.
hold
When
his
did I
own,
say
bro.
that? Bro, you cannot put anybody. Listen. If you're going to talk about disrespecting the old guys, you know that I'm the last person you want to target. I'll give love to Merlin Olsen, man. All right? We'll put him in the top 5. But Aaron Donald's the GOAT.
Aaron Donald is, and it's to have that kind of success also in the modern NFL. And the biggest thing, too, is the gap that was between Donald and any other defender on planet Earth during his tenure, right? You can look at like J.J. Watt. You know, I think you can go TJ. Those are guys that are coming for the crown, but there's still a gap, in my opinion. And you can't replace a guy like that. He's an all-timer. And Ernest Jones, I just don't understand the trade value in the NFL, man. I never really have. The fact that this guy broke the Rams single-season tackle mark last year. He's all over the field. And you get back you give the Titans a conditional 6th-round pick and then get a 5th-round pick back. Like, it just sucks losing a player like that for such minuscule value. So they're really big losses. And I don't know, this division, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think this and the AFC South for me were the toughest to predict. And there's just a level of trust I have with Matt Stafford that I don't have with other quarterbacks in this division. And that was the deal breaker, right? I have a lot of questions about the Cardinals. I have a lot of questions about the Seahawks. I think I know what I'm getting with this Rams offense and Matt Stafford, and that's what did it for me. But I'm worried, man. I'm worried about this defense a lot. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't.
And McVay as well. I mean, he's just in it all the time. Like, it's LaFleur, McVay, and Shanahan have been in the NFC Championship game like 75% of the time since 2017 or 2018. I can't remember the exact year. I looked it up at one point. That's the same percentage as like Big Ben, Brady, and Manning in the AFC years ago. Like, I think that those three are just kind of have that level of juice to them where they can kind of will things into existence. So it definitely scares me to predict the Rams and McVay and Stafford so low. But man, like you said, it is a really tough division, and I might have a little bit more faith in like Geno and Kyler than you.
We had the appetizer last week. Now it's time to feast. College football is back. Don't miss any of the action. Jump in at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's a full slate of games for week 1, including the big matchup in Atlanta between the preseason number 1 and number 16.
This is going to be DraftKings' biggest college football season to date. Enjoy the ride now all the way through the expanded playoffs. Plus, all newbies getting into the college spirit, here's something extra special. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly.
Score big with DraftKings all college football season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Well, let's talk about it. Theo, you said that you have the Rams last in this division. So who is the second best team to you?
I got the Seahawks. I really like the Seahawks. I'm just running back an old take, which was that the Seahawks were going to be some powerhouse last year. Total misfire, like absolute disaster. They missed the playoffs. We're running it back, do-over. I think that Geno Smith is as good as now as he was in 2022. I think that the main problem that the Seahawks faced last season was 10 different iterations along their offensive line. I think early in the season they kind of struggled to get their weapons all involved to the level that they could be. It was a lot of screens and underneath stuff for JSN. I think a little bit later those things kind of got figured out. Their defense completely collapsed. They were terrible compared to their talent level, but I think Mike McDonald can fix that a little bit. I don't know. It mostly just comes down to faith in Geno Smith. I think when you've got a franchise quarterback, you can always project above average offensive results, at least most of the time. And I think that Geno Smith has the pocket presence, the accuracy, the football IQ to be regarded as one of those franchise guys. I mean, his game against Pittsburgh last year was, I know they lost that game, but Geno was balling and they just couldn't tackle anybody. Now, will they be able to tackle anybody this year? I don't know. But I think that McDonald has a lot to work with. Jaron Reed, Boye Mafe. I know Uchenna Nwosu is banged up, but he'll be back eventually. The rookie, Byron Murphy II. I'm forgetting some. Leonard Williams, best defensive lineman that they've got. It's just a deep group. And last season, I was wondering, like, how are the Ravens going to get pressure rushing for? They got Adafe Owe, they got Kyle Van Noy, Matabike hadn't broken out yet. Michael Pierce is like, is this going to have any kind of pass rush? Mike McDonald was able to design it so they were able to get bodies in coverage and generate pressure on the quarterback, manufacture pressure on the quarterback. I think he's going to be able to do the same thing with the Seahawks front seven. And then on the back end, they have some pieces that I like. Witherspoon, Reek Woolen. The safeties were a little bit rough last year, I won't lie. Like the core of this defensive linebackers and safeties, I am worried about. But I think there's enough here that an elite defensive mind can turn things around. And I think the offense and Geno Smith wasn't as bad last year as people think. I think they're due for a bounce back.
The defense is the big question with me, and I hope Mike McDonald can figure it out. You mentioned that Steelers game, and we ran the ball down the Seahawks' throat. The Seahawks last year had the number 27 rushing defense, and this is what opposing teams did to them just rushing. 2,352 rushing yards in 24 TDs.
Yeah.
Atrocious. I mean, abysmal. They had 12 games where they allowed 100 or more rushing yards, and they had 3 games where they allowed 200 or more rushing yards. They lose all their starting linebackers. Bobby Wagner is in Washington. Jordan Brooks is in Miami. Buffalo's Tyrell Dodson steps up. You've got Jerome Baker as well. The secondary, I do like the cornerback tandem here. I love Devin Witherspoon. I loved him out of the draft. I thought he should have been he was my pick to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. His ability in coverage, how good he is as a tackler, like that guy's a playmaker. I like Reek. I like what we saw to Michael Jackson last season. I am worried about the safeties. Julian Love and Rayshon Jenkins scare me a lot.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a lot to think that Mike McDonald, I know he's a brilliant defensive mind. He's one of the best in the league. I have the Seahawks and the Cardinals finishing with the exact same record. I have them both going 7-10. I have the Cardinals finishing better in the division, so the Seahawks are actually last for me out here. I just think it's a lot to ask Mike McDonald to completely turn this defense around in one season, and he might do it. I'm rooting for the guy. On the other side, I disagree. I wrote down here in my notes, I think Geno Smith is a thoroughly mediocre quarterback. I do not think he's a franchise guy. I don't know. I don't think Geno's all that. I do think he is surrounded by elite skill position talent. Walker and Charbonnet in the backfield, DK, JSN, and Lockett for wideouts. But with that, I'm really scared about this offensive line. You have a brand new interior offensive line. Laken Tomlinson, Christian Haynes. That scares me. I think the interior offensive line is going to be bad. I think they might be able to get pressure home on Geno. And so I think you're looking at him to make quicker decisions, to get through his progressions faster. I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball as effectively. And then I just think this defense is coming from a really low point. If McDonald can turn the defense around, I think there's enough skill position talent to where the Seahawks could make a playoff push. That being said, though, I just think it's a lot to ask, and I'm just not as big a believer as in Geno Smith as you guys are.
Oh, I believe in Geno. Logan and I had a debate a few weeks ago. He said he would take Russell Wilson over Geno at the time. He's already gone back on it.
All right, well, Russ sucks. Russ sucks. I would take
Yeah.
Baker over Geno, though. I'd take Baker.
Well, you love Baker. Listen, I won't even push back. I know you love Baker. I would take Geno, but I don't want to take away your quirked up white boy from you. But again, I'm closer to Theo here. I have the Seahawks as the second best team in the division. I have them winning 10 games. I have them in the playoffs. I think that this is a really promising team. When we talk about the defense, because I do think that that is probably the bigger key. I think that this offense is clearly very talented. I think that from where they were at last year, but the defense is where they really struggled. Logan, you talk about not being sure that Mike Macdonald can come in and fix everything. Do you think that there was a defense in football last year that underachieved their talent more than the Seahawks?
No.
So that's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the Eagles, but
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, the Eagles, then I think the Seahawks, those are like the clear top two choices. So from that perspective, I'm not like Mike Macdonald has to come in here and do some sort of miracle working, spray the holy water on all the boys, right, and save this defense. Like, he just has to get them to play up to their potential, and I absolutely think that he can do that. And that's not to say that it's like a complete perfect defense, but I do like the secondary overall. I think the safeties, not great, but okay. I think the corner play should be obviously a massive strength for this team with Woolen and Witherspoon. And I think when you look at the linebacking core, Jerome Baker's solid. Dodson is solid. He's not good in coverage. He allowed a passer rating of 109 when targeted last year, but just as
he's better than Wagner.
Physical. That's the
He's
thing.
better than
Like,
Wagner.
I know you're a big anti-Bobby Wagner guy the last couple of years, Theo. I don't think that that's a big loss. Like, I look at the linebackers and I go, they weren't great last year. They'll probably be okay this year. And I think a full season of Leonard Williams in this defense is huge. I don't love the front around him, but I think that there is much more talent on this defense than the results last year, which, like, yeah, say that they were one of the worst defenses in football reflected. And I do like Mike Macdonald a lot. And so I think that there's going to be dramatic improvement in the defense. And then the offense, I do think should be good. I'm a Geno guy. I think that he checks a lot of boxes. He avoids sacks. He's got good arm talent. He's a beautiful deep ball thrower. We've seen him hold up. 2023, he was really good against the blitz. Just overall, over the last couple years, he's been one of the more efficient passers by yards per attempt. Doesn't turn the ball over too much. There are some decisions from him that you would like back, but overall, 52 touchdowns to 27 turnovers the last couple years. Pretty good. Accurate, as Theo said. Like, the league is so stacked that I'm not even necessarily going to confidently say that he's an above average starter. But here's what I will say. If we were ranking the quarterbacks in this division, and if I were starting from scratch, I would take him over Brock Purdy. Do you guys agree with that?
I think I might.
I like Purdy a lot. I'd probably take Brock.
Okay. Theo?
I think I'd take Geno. I think he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the entire league. Last year, his pressure rate was 40.8%. That was the 15th percentile. That's bad. His sack rate was 5.8%. That's 71st percentile. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So under a lot of pressure, he was able to manage the pocket. None of his stats were really eye-popping last year, but very average EPA per dropback, average yard per attempt, even a bit above average, I'd say. 7.3, that's fine. Didn't really turn the ball over, remained explosive. He can scramble around. Like, he's not a running quarterback, but he can move a little bit. Like, I think that Geno's got everything that you're looking for outside of, like, the fact that he was a backup for such a long time. 2022 happened. It seemed like a fluke. And then I think this year, it felt like a crash back down to earth, but I really think it's the offensive line that collapsed and not Geno. So I would take Geno.
I think that if you are looking at, like, the sort of one-year wonder...
Wait, you guys would... Hold up, not to cut you off. You guys would take Geno over... Would you take Geno over Kyler?
I would not take Geno over Kyler.
Okay.
I think they're very similar. I might.
Interesting.
I might. I'm a very big fan. I'm a very big fan of Geno Smith. I think he's one of the top pocket passers in the league today.
I think Kyler's rushing ability is so game-breaking, and I do think that all the arm talent is there. Like, he's not as good a pocket passer as Geno, but I think that his raw tools, to me, outweigh Geno's advantage there. But it's not a big gap. I mean, I think all these guys, like, off the top of my head, they're somewhere between, like, the 14th and 18th best starting quarterbacks in football. All three of these guys, I think they're really in the same tier, which is why I think it's an interesting conversation. But I like Geno's tools. And you mentioned, Theo, like the yards per attempt, 9th in football last year in this situation with this terrible offensive line crumbling around him. The sack rate is super impressive. Now, the offensive line isn't necessarily going to be that much better is the concern. Like, it's still going to be really bad, but I believe in him. I think the receiving core is excellent. I like Walker and Charbonnet as a duo in the backfield. I do like them adding Connor Williams at center for Miami. I still think the line sucks, but I think it could suck, 15% less than last year when it was just abysmal.
If they can suck and be healthy.
Yeah, literally. That alone would be an improvement. So I am optimistic about the Seahawks this year, and I think it hinges on believing in Geno and believing that this defense is going to take a real step forward. Logan, any final thoughts before we move on?
I mean, I've just been thinking. I don't disagree with you. You guys make good arguments, and in a way, what this kind of does remind me of is, you guys are right. Like, it's not a completely talentless defense. I could see this team being like the Bucs from last year. You know what I mean? Average quarterback, bad line play, good weapons, and enough talent on the defense to where you can get by and maybe get even carried some games by the defense. So I think they're going to be around 500. I would be really, really surprised. I'll go ahead and say it. I would be shocked if the Seahawks made the playoffs. That would stun me a little bit. I think I would be shocked. But the one thing I wanted to add, though, is there is merit, man. I feel bad for quarterbacks who kind of get drafted early and then are discarded after playing in really bad situations. Mm-hmm. And Geno is kind of a testament to sitting for a while, learning, and getting better in the dark. You know what I mean? You don't actually have game footage of the guy getting better. But even, I'll shout out a Steeler like Mason Rudolph, you see, sits for 4 years basically in between his starts where I hated him. And he seemed a lot more composed. A lot happens, and I think there are more guys that maybe, deserve more opportunities and can, Darnold is going to have that opportunity this year.
Yeah, and Darnold played his best football, like, on the Panthers, like the last stretch of time that we saw him. He took over for Baker, who coincidentally is also kind of going through the same thing. Yeah. But then, Darnold, after years where Robbie Chosen was his wide receiver one, and he was the youngest starting quarterback basically ever on the Jets. He shows up and starts trending in the right direction way late. I don't know if he'll ever be great, but they can. I'd rather have a 30-year-old than a 21-year-old a lot of the time. Like, I don't care who they are. So
that's fair. That's fair.
But
I do think Darnold is probably set up to have his best season ever. Like, that's fully what I expect. I still think Darnold sucks, though, at the end of the day. I think that this year for Darnold is going to be more of a testament to the fact that if you put a capable veteran, which, to be fair, is what we're talking about, but in a good offensive situation, he can not mess things up, but you're never going to pay him. Whereas Geno, Baker, these are dudes who you're not going to want to pay $50 million like we're seeing, but you would pay $30 million. You would pay what Baker just got this past offseason, and you would invest in them as your starters. And that's what I was saying, Theo, earlier before Logan asked the Kyler question. What you were talking about with Geno, and there's the perception like he fell off a cliff. I think a lot of people did expect him to be a one-year wonder, and there's sort of that preconceived notion then that, okay, he's going to collapse. And his production wasn't what it was the year before, and he wasn't as good as he was the year before. But I would argue that once you're hit with like that one-year wonder tag, it's actually pretty impressive when you can mostly replicate the results. He wasn't as good, but I think he pretty definitively proved that, no, that was not a fluke. This is a at least average starting quarterback, and I think that bodes well for him, and I think that bodes well for the Seahawks. All right, we're going to wrap up here with the Cardinals. Logan, none of us have them last in the division, ironically, but they're the last team that we're getting to. Logan, what's your expectations for them this year?
Yeah, so I have them going 7-10.
Well. I do have them last in the division. I have them going 7-10 as well.
I think the biggest question is what we get out of Kyler Murray and how much he can really carry this team. I think they're equipped to be better than years previous. I like the rushing offense. They were second in terms of yards per attempt last season with James Conner. You add Trey Benson into the fold. Hopefully he can be a little change of pace back, can relieve Conner, be a nice tandem out of the backfield. I like the receiving cores. You bring in Marvin Harrison Jr., you got Trey McBride, Greg Dortch. And outside of Froholt in the center spot, I like this offensive line. I think they've got a franchise tackle duo in Paris Johnson and Jonah Williams. The big question is going to be what they can do to improve defensively. There's a lot of turnover, but this team was number 30 defending the pass last year, number 29 defending against the run. They had the third fewest sacks in the NFL with 33. They were 31st in pressure rate. I think this front, quite frankly, is going to suck. I don't think they're going to get a ton of pressure on the QB. I don't think they're going to be able to defend against the run. I do like the secondary. I like the safety tandem of Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson. They add in Sean Murphy-Bunting. I don't know who's going to start in the cornerback 2 spot. I think that's a little bit shaky. So I think this team is going to have to win on the back of their offense, right? I think the safeties in this secondary can keep, offenses from having explosive plays, but I don't think the front 7 is going to do them any justice. The thing I'm worried about with the Cardinals is them just starting out slow. They have the Bills, Rams, Lions, Eagles, and Packers in the first 6 weeks of their schedule.
Yeah.
And that's just really tough when you have a lot of question marks about this defense. But Jonathan Gannon is, supposed to be a defensive, mastermind. So I think this is going to be a real test, man, with limited talent across this defense, seeing if this team can improve whatsoever. So I think this is a team that's going to be carried on the back of their offense. And they were in games last year. They did lose 5 one-score games last year. So I think they're going to be competitive, but it's going to be Kyler that is going to have to will this team to victory, and this is going to be on the back of their offense. I think this defense could be close to the bottom, like a bottom 5 unit across the board. It's just, there's not a lot of talent here.
No, there's not. It was them and the Commanders were the 2 worst defensive units in the league last year. The Commanders spent a ton of money in free agency bringing people in. I don't think the Cardinals did quite the same, right? They brought in like Bilal Nichols, I think, and some C-list free agents. So I don't know what the problem is going to be. I know last year Gannon got the reputation as like, well, he's keeping them scrappy. Like he's actually better than you'd think. And then you look at the numbers and it's like, bro, they're dead last and they do nothing well. Like I don't know how scrappy they are. He would rush 3 and drop everybody else into coverage and like pray to God that they didn't hit a 60-yard bomb over the top. Like, okay, like you can't rush the passer now, and they're still just holding the ball and finding the holes in the zone. So I think you can expect a lot more of that. I think Robinson, their rookie, is going to help them against the run. They desperately need some just grown-ass men up front, and that is what Robinson is, just huge length. He should be a glass eater stopping the run. But again, like you said, Logan, who's rushing the passer here? Maybe Xavier Thomas, the rookie, has some potential. They've got Gardeck, who I thought had a great season last year, and then you look at the numbers at the end, and he has 7.5 sacks or 6.5, something like that. So it's like, what is his upside really? They will need a ton of interceptions to be a good defense. Like, they'll play quarters, put a roof on everything, jump everything with some ball hawks. Maybe that's how they get it done, but it's a tough thing to bank on. I feel very similarly about the Cardinals as I do the Rams. I have a lot of faith in their offense, but just not a lot of faith in the defense. But there is something to be said for how good this offense, I think that they are. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr., elite prospect. I think he's exactly what Kyler needs. When Kyler came back, the results weren't too terrible. They were actually a top 10 offense overall after Kyler's return, mostly based on the rushing offense, which was great.
Also beat the Steelers,
They beat the Steelers, beat the Eagles, although that wasn't saying much by the end last year. But they were a great rushing attack. Petzing did a phenomenal job. It's very varied. With what they run, zone, gap scheme with pullers, read option with Kyler, right? You can twist defenses in knots, and then Connor's such a tackle breaker, and so is Trey Benson. Like, those two are going to be problems. And then Kyler last year, he hardly focused on the sidelines at all. He had no one that he wanted to take shots to at the perimeter. You'd think that would be the opposite of what Kyler would do, right? Kyler is short. He struggles a little bit over the middle of the field, but he was focused on kind of those auxiliary targets, Trey McBride in the middle of the tight end. Greg Dortch emerged kind of as his favorite target. I think that Greg Dortch is a really good player that's going to slot in better as a wide receiver 3 than a wide receiver 1, So I think the addition of Marvin Harrison is going to cause an already good offense to, at the very least, sustain. Like, I think all the pieces are going to kind of fall into place with Marv, and things are going to be good. I like Petzing a lot more than Kingsbury. I think it's going to be an offense good enough to keep them in the hunt, but ultimately I do think the defense will sink them.
We all have a very similar outlook on the Cardinals. I wanted to get a little froggy here. I wanted to see if I could pick them to not be last in the division, to win 8 or 9 games, because I do like the offense. And Logan, you've been touching on this for a while now. It does feel like Kyler has definitely become underrated. I think that there's a lot of resentment towards him because he likes the game so much. Like, I don't know why people dislike Kyler as much as they do, because he was the number 1 overall pick, and I guess just great expectations come with that no matter what. But when you think about the Cardinals' success in 2020, in 2021, the last couple years that we've seen a fully healthy Kyler, like, what's it been on the back of? It's been on the back of him overwhelmingly, him taking these offensive units that aren't super talented to produce at a really high level to give you 25, 26 points per game. And he's doing that with his legs, his play extension, his raw arm talent. He's greatly enhancing your offense in every way. Doesn't turn the ball over too much. Like, I'm very high on Kyler. I do think that he's a really good above average starting quarterback. And that's the guy who I expect to see, the guy who we saw over those fully healthy seasons. And I think that he played well last year. Theo, you mentioned the difference he made. They were 1-8 without him. They were 3-5 with him. Without him, they averaged 16.8 points per game. With him, 22.4 points per game. And again, that's with like an offense that everybody looked at and said, like, yeah, this is the worst skill position talent in football. Like, everybody was fully expecting them to pick number 1 overall, even knowing Kyler might come back at the end of the year. Now you add Marvin Harrison Jr. to that room. McBride emerged as a stud in the second half of the year. Dortch, as you mentioned, Theo, once Kyler came back, really emerged. I don't mind Michael Wilson as just another target in that receiving room. So you combine that with the fact that they ran the ball very well last year. You have Kyler's threat with his legs. You have Connor, who had an excellent season. They were 4th in rushing yards, 2nd in yards per attempt last year. I think the line should be okay, mediocre. You bring in Jonah Williams, hope to see Paris Johnson progress, but I'm not too concerned about that, especially with how well Kyler moves around in and outside the pocket. So I like the offense a lot. I don't think that it's quite on the Rams level, but I think it's an above average offense. It's just the defense. I mean, you mentioned, Theo, like basically bottom of the league in every possible respect. I do not like the front. Darius Robinson, you mentioned, who they bring in the first round. He's going to be out sometime. It doesn't look like it's a big thing, but he's been out with a calf thing that it looks like might carry over into the regular season. I don't think it'll be more than a few weeks, but nevertheless, there's, a dynamic, promising talent who is not immediately going to be available maybe for a unit that desperately needs that. I'm good with the Mac Wilson ad for the linebackers. I think that they're okay. They invest in corner with Max Melton, but like, even expecting improvement, which I do expect, again, you're coming from the absolute gutter. You're coming from the depths of the depths. So even with the improvement I'm expecting, I'm still expecting a bad defense. And that's where I just can't talk myself into them being like, a frisky sort of playoff team. Even though I like Kyler, I'm happy to see him paired with the receiver prospects of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s caliber. It's just that defense.
Yeah, just to add on really quick about what you were saying about Kyler, I mean, I do think he's like a fringe top 10 guy. I wouldn't argue he's top 10 with the, just
Position
immense amount of
stacked.
talent we have at the position nowadays. But what was also the reason of why those teams were great was because you had DeAndre Hopkins, a bona fide top 5 receiver in football. And, I don't want to put those kind of expectations on Marvin Harrison Jr., but the kid's nasty. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if he can reach that height. I just think it's another loaded position, but you've given Kyler another bona fide number 1 target that he can go to, and that was the dynamic that was sorely missing from this offense last year, right? There's no explosiveness. Like, you talk about it, Theo, he's not even looking towards the sidelines. With a guy like Marv, that dynamic should completely change, and
Yeah.
there's something to look forward to there. I think it's going to make Kyler's life easier, and it's going to make that offense that much better.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see him and Michael Wilson really gel as well. Last year, Michael Wilson started out of the gate really hot with Josh Dobbs, and then he got banged up. Kyler returned. They had some really ugly games where, like, Michael Wilson didn't catch a pass for like a month or something like that. But I do think that Michael Wilson is a very good player. Like, he has great hands. He was very explosive last year. Like, with Dobbs, he looked like that dude. And then those last 2 games that the Cardinals played, I thought the Kyler to Wilson connection was looking a little bit better now that they had some time to play together finally. So I'm picking Wilson up in like the last round of all my fantasy drafts because I think that he has the potential to emerge as a really solid wide receiver too.
6th round pick in our 32-man league, probably. That's an elite find there if you're getting him on the squad.
Logan, I'm sorry. Speaking of the 32-person league, Logan, I'm sorry about your quarterback situation.
Dude. Oh, yeah. I probably gifted you a week 1 dub. You're welcome. I might be gifting.
Wait, who's your quarterback, Logan?
Drake May.
Oh.
I mean, I think it's inevitable that he's going to start, but it's like I'm probably punting like however many weeks until he starts out. Like I'm gonna need my defense or my kicker or somebody.
You're gonna need to make a trade. You're gonna need to make a trade or hit the waiver wires.
Because somebody out there, some sick fuck stockpiled 2 starters. I actually being one of them. If you want Bo Nix, talk to me and we can see if we can make something happen.
Are you gonna make me give up May to get Bo Nix? I don't want to give up Drake.
I want your wide receiver 1.
All right, bro. After this, we'll get into negotiations. My people will contact your people.
Yeah.
I would give you Derek Carr, but I not Derek Carr.
I'd rather have Drake May giving me 0 points.
Logan will take the 0 for 6 weeks.
Dude, Derek Carr at QB 30 is gonna be a steal in that league.
Absolutely. Oh my God, that's incredible value.
But I already traded my backup Sam Darnold away for Christian Watson, so I can't let Derek Carr go.
It's a great trade.
Is that a great trade?
And I gotta play you week 1. Fuck,
I am so worried about the quarterback situation because I took Rodgers, and that's why I was like 6th round. I'm taking a quarterback because I just can't. I can't take a 0 at quarterback at any point in this season. I can't have a non-starting quarterback as my starting quarterback. No offense, Logan.
I feel you, but I had like Wiley as my starting tight end, and my flex was also garbage, and I wanted to feel good about my starting lineup on paper, but maybe that's short-sighted. I traded away Khalil Shakir as well, Carson.
No!
I don't know.
Why? You saw the vision. We were just talking about this.
I know, but I just...
You fool!
It was a 2-for-1. I traded him for Isaiah Likely and Hunter Henry.
Oh my God, bro is obsessed with tight ends.
Theo is fleecing, man. Theo is actually
That's not a fleece. That's not a fleece. Khalil Shakir will be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. I mean, for my 32-team league, I actually hope it's Keon Coleman because he is the Bills receiver who I have, but I think Shakir is probably better year 1.
Shakir probably is better, but I just didn't want to deal with Wiley as my starting tight end all season.
Heinous. That's heinous. I get it.
And then I was able to get Watson. So we'll see. We'll see. I think the team got better, but it also got way more injury prone and thin. So we'll see.
Listen, you got to have the upside. You got to have the talent on the roster. I currently have Josh Kelly still on my team, who is an unsigned free agent at this point. So I'm looking to upgrade with my depth running backs.
I'm checking my phone. I'm seeing that Listen to Nerd Sesh has put some players on the trade block. Hayden Hurst, Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Boyd. No one wants these guys.
Logan, you're putting your whole team on the trade block?
Bro, I have to get a quarterback now, man.
I might talk to you about Tyler Boyd. I will definitely give you Josh Kelly for Tyler Boyd.
We could make something happen. Actually, I think we can make something happen.
We'll talk. You and I, buddy. We've got those relationships. Relationships are everything when it comes to the front office. Do people trust you? Do they respect you? Logan and I have that. All right. Any final thoughts on this division, gentlemen? Do we think this is the best division in football?
AFC North does in fact exist.
I agree. I think it's the AFC North as well. Just throwing it out there. Theo, what do you think?
I'd probably go with the AFC North as well.
Yeah. I think AFC East, best top 3 in my opinion, but the Pats are just going to be one of the worst teams in football. NFC North?
I think the AFC and NFC West are pretty good, pretty up there.
Yeah, NFC North pretty good as well, but...
AFC West? Yeah. Logan, you Raiders fiend.
The Raiders are good, man. Fiend. The Raiders are good.
I think that they will be a heaping pile of mediocre.
See, I don't like them, but then I think about how, Antonio Pierce just is a Raider, and then I get excited. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if.
Wait until he finds a way to commit massive recruiting violations at the NFL level, and it all goes.
You can't. So
down.
What's the problem? You know,
he'll find a way. He'll find a way.
Tampering,
massive tampering.
Raiders are punished by getting sent back to Oakland.
How dare you? You disrespect the glorious Bay Area. who are now losing yet another Oakland team to Vegas. First Sacramento. RIP to Oakland sports teams. On that somber note, we will let you go. Actually, Theo, where's the gift I got you for your birthday, pal? I was expecting to see it front and center. There it is.
I got it right here.
Oh,
I got it right
wonderful.
here.
That warms the heart.
That's Aaron Rodgers on ayahuasca, man.
Reading the defense gist. That's me playing NCAA 25 late at night.
So real. God, that's so real. That's me with the Cal Bears. Glorious dynasty. Yeah, I got Theo, a freaky little guy.
Yeah, he's
nice.
a little freaky. He's a little
He's a
freaky.
freak fuck. Look at those eyes.
He comes alive late at the night and he runs around and he scares me. But,
Yeah, of course.
but I can't ever quite catch him. I come bursting in with my net and then he's just right
And he's
back
just
on
frozen.
his
He's
little stool.
frozen right back in his little stool. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
classic. Classic Corbin, as I named him. All right, Theo. Thank you for coming on. It was a delight to have you. Everybody, of course, go watch Stay Hot if you're not already. Go watch all their full shows. Go watch their clips on TikTok. Go follow Theo on TikTok. Theo makes some of the best, most thoughtful content that you will see on that silly ad dance platform. And there's a great deal to be learned about football from this man. And go listen to his new show with the Pro Football Network and go follow them on TikTok because he's doing stuff for them there as well. If you want more of our content, then you probably know where to find it. Follow us on YouTube. Listen to the show across audio platforms. Follow us across social for all of our graphics from the show, clips from the show, and all of our trivia content. And we have a bunch of different kind of show content out over the summer. We have a trivia episode with Theo and the Stay Hot Boys, as we do with numerous other guests. We just did one with Jason Timpf and Jovan Buha last week. It was all Lakers themed. We've got NBA offseason rankings, and we are now almost done with our NFL season preview content because, baby, it is coming in hot. So, Theo, any last words before we let you go? God bless America is always a safe bet. No. There's power in silence. Beautiful, beautiful. One last shout out to Theo. With that, as always, I have been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.